recording with Bert, B-E-R-T, Zavitz, Z-A-V-I-T-Z, 7058 West Brandywine Circle, Fort Myers, Florida. Area code 813-489-2758. On Monday, March the 6th, 1989, at his home in Fort Myers with Helen Earley of the Oldsmobile History Center. Tape 1 of 1 tape. Well, Bert, you just, whatever comes to your mind. You spent some time at Plant Engineering, didn't you?
Well, yes, I worked there all the while I was a General Motor.
Okay, well, when did you hire in at Oldsmobile?
October 1st, 1934.
Is that right? Okay, where was the
I was
employment?
a General Motors tech student.
Ah, what did you major in? Well,
Mechanical engineering.
Mechanical engineering, okay. When you hired in at Olds, where was the employment office then?
I don't know.
Okay, do you remember?
I hired in through Julian, Carp Julian.
Carp Julian.
Was the personnel director.
Okay, fine. What was your first job?
Working in a tin shop
And where was that located?
in Building 40.
Who was your foreman, do you remember?
Doc White.
Doc White. Okay, do you remember what your hire-in salary was?
50-some cents.
Oh, gracious sakes. What did you do in the tin shop?
Owned everything.
Well, give me some specifics.
Well, I switched around in the machine shop and the tin shop and just a helper.
Uh-huh.
But
What are they
General
doing?
Motors tech students weren't really looked on with very much. These were still Depression times, you know.
True.
And I was taking a job of somebody else, you know.
Well, what did you do in the tin shop, though?
I was a helper.
And you helped do what?
Make pipes and stuff that a tin shop does.
Okay.
Ventilation work.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you there?
Oh, God, I can't answer that.
Okay, well, then you moved to
I moved to Forge Plant in 40.
Building 40.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the forge plant had been built and was running.
No,
Oh, they were still building it?
it was a Rhinebone Foundry.
Ryan Bone Foundry,
And then
okay.
the corporation bought it.
Okay.
They started to put in a hammer shop. And I was over there very early.
Mm-hmm. Who was your foreman, do you remember?
A guy named Cook,
Remember his first name?
Martin Cook.
Cook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you remember what your starting salary was over there?
No, wasn't any salary, it was hourly.
Hourly, well.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, so this was after 1940 that Oldsmobile bought the Ryan Bone?
Mm-hmm. They just started. I was the first hourly employee hired in the forge plant.
Is that right?
Yeah.
For heaven's sakes. What did you do? You were in what department?
Plant engineering.
Plant engineering. And what was your job?
Oh, we did everything. Helped install machinery, and we were setting up machinery. They were building the hammer shop.
Building the hammer shop.
At Plant 3, which now I understand is where this Buick is being assembled.
Right.
That was the hammer shop,
Okay.
where crankshafts were made.
Mm-hmm.
They made very few crankshafts before they switched over to war.
So almost immediately they were reverting to
Yep.
war work.
We
What-
were making shells a long time before Pearl Harbor.
You were. You remember how long before?
They sent me east expediting machinery in early 40. I was expediting machinery.
Would that be machinery to build cannon or shells?
Build shells.
Build shells. Was that 37 37 millimeter
No, no.
or 75?
No, these were 75, 105, then the 155. I think the 37 millimeter was made over Plant 1.
Okay.
But we were making shells a long time before Pearl Harbor.
Yes,
They say we weren't getting ready, but
really were. Who was your superintendent? Do you remember?
well, Plant Engineer was, to start with, was John Dakin.
Oh, yes, John Dakin. Okay. What about building 201? Did you work in that? What purpose was that building?
That's where the machine shop was, in the dye room.
Okay.
The dye rooms, dye machinery is a thing of the past. They don't make dyes anymore. They don't have forge plants. We had a big machine shop, which I was in charge of at one time.
And that machine shop made dyes?
No.
No? Okay.
Our machine shop made repair parts for the hammers and so forth. The dye room part made the dyes that went in the machine.
Okay. So the machine shop made the repair parts?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
What kind of repair parts were you making?
The rods for the hammers and the upsetters. I'm talking a foreign language to you.
Yes, but we want to get it down because it'll help someone
These are enormous
else.
big machines, and these require big parts. There are cranes overhead, and I don't know if they're there yet or not.
You remember the brand of machines?
Oh Lord, yes, there were Erie hammers,
Erie hammers.
National Machinery presses, Ajax upsetters, and Ajax presses, and Clark hammers. Big forging people in the world were those four people.
Okay.
Which I hardly made it. The forging industry just died.
What did the hammers, what was their purpose?
Made crankshafts.
To make crankshafts. Okay.
Yeah. We're the biggest automotive forge shop in the world at one time.
Is that right?
We made crankshafts for Cadillac, Oldsmobile, International Harvester, Detroit Diesel. Then after the hammers went out, the big presses came in. 6,000-ton presses that made the crankshaft.
Let's see.
They phased out the hammers, and then they went to presses. Now the forging is phased out.
Yes.
Has been shortly after I left, I guess.
Well, how could they install those huge presses?
We hired riggers that knew how to do it. Pieces weighed 150 ton a piece, the increments. They would put up big A-frame structures, and people knew how. Darren Armstrong normally handled that. He was a big contractor out of Detroit.
Okay.
Built most of the buildings at Oldsmobile.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
What other buildings were built at Plant 2 while you were there?
Oh, Plant 6, Building 6. That was added. The new dye room and a new cafeteria were added. And the managerial offices upstairs.
Did the Plant 2 operate as a separate entity
Yes, sir.
from Oldsmobile?
One time it was an independent division.
It was.
Yeah, the point of big, at the higher levels, everybody was mad at one another, but C.B. Dakin was the last one that, you remember him?
Yes.
All right, well, C.B. was the last one that had an independent status.
I see.
Of course, we have a separate union over there.
What was your union? Local?
Yeah, different local.
What was the number of your local?
I can't remember that.
That's okay.
Can't remember that. But it was a bone of contention because they always struck our plant, not because they had any grievance in our plant, because we affected so many other divisions. Affected Buick, we affected Cadillac, because we made parts that they had to have, and so they strike us over no real grievance at our plant, but just if we were the strike target and they had everything they wanted to get settled, they got settled through us.
Do you remember any real long strikes?
Well, there was one great big long one in 46.
True, that was the whole plant though.
Yep, that was everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when they had a strike, each plant had to settle before,
But its own local,
before the general strike was over.
right?
Lots of times we were the last ones to settle, because they were trying to gain points at our place, and we were holding up all these other places. But I don't know whether they have resolved that union difference or not. I don't know. But when CB left and Tom Darton came in,
You remember what year that was?
No,
Okay.
we were under, it was after 55.
All right.
We were under main plant management.
Right.
We'd always been a little bit, but somehow or other it was a separate entity. But I didn't know how that was handled. But anyway, it was completely handled, and sooner or later our accounting, which was a separate thing, moved over. Niehoff, do you remember John Niehoff?
Yes.
Well, John was the head of our accounting, and they took all that and went over to the other plant and became one big unit.
Nice.
I can't remember just when that was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember how they built some of the buildings? What procedures they went through? Like you mentioned, building 6, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what did building 6 do, and how did they build that
That's where all the
structure?
heat treatment was just a regular, simple manufacturing building, where all the heat treat furnaces were, and the pickling tanks,
Okay.
inspections.
What about the heat treat? How did that operate? What did the heat treat?
Well, that's where all the forgings were heat treated. In other words, the chemistry was brought to by heating and quenching and drawing, they brought the knuckles and the crankshafts and the axles to the right physical structure that was required to stand up under an
Okay.
enormous heat treat department.
How many people would you think may have worked there when you were there? In the heat treat alone? 20, 30?
Oh no, it must have been a couple hundred.
Okay.
I had shot blast to clean. You know what I'm talking about, a shot blast?
No, tell me about a shot blast.
Well, they roll the wheel around and their little pellets of steel fly out and hit the part, knock all the scale off from it.
Oh,
Forgings have scale on them.
after they come from the...
After they're hot, then there's scale for them.
Okay.
You have to not get the scale off before they can be machined.
So that each forging then would have to go through the shot
Either
blast.
either be pickled off with acid or
Or the
knocked
shot.
off with a shot blast.
Okay. Well, what did you do with this pickling compound, with the chemicals, after you... How did they dispose of those?
We tried to set up leaching ponds, and which turned out to be an awful mess.
Where were those ponds?
Right out and back toward Rosemary Street. And then we'd have to haul that residue way to the dump once in a while.
You mean this liquid was dumped in this leaching pond?
And then the stuff settled out and the water evaporated, and
And then you'd have to
oh,
haul the crud away.
That's a good word for it.
Uh-huh. Well, what about the contamination of the soil around Plant 2? Was that a problem?
Well, I wouldn't think so. No. And then in later years, we evolved a system whereby all wastewater in the plant were funneled into one place, and then this spent acid was added to that.
What kind of acid?
Spent acid.
Spent acid.
Used and added to that.
Would that be like pickling
And the pickling acid, the hydrochloric or sulfuric acid,
Okay.
that would be added to this wastewater at a measured rate. Because most of the effluents that are coming from laundries and everything are on the basic side. Their pH is on the other side. And this acid that we were adding at this slow rate just kind of nullified those and was acceptable to the city.
So it was
It was a
actually...
controlled process, but
Right.
we got rid of the spent acid that way.
So then you recycled your water too?
Yep.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
We really had water towers.
Oh, you had your own well?
We had 3 of them.
3 for Plant 2 alone?
Yeah.
So you really didn't draw on city water?
We did use city water and had a city water recirculating plant for the induction heaters. Induction heaters are high frequency current to heat steel. All connecting rods and everything like that were heated in induction heaters. And the city water is very low in dissolved solids. See, our well water, when you dip water out of a well, is very high in dissolved solids. And if you have these high dissolved solids cool in these coils where you heat this, they clog up and burn out. So we use city water for that. And had and recirculated through a tower, a cooling tower. Maybe you do know what I'm talking about.
No, but I'd like to hear your explanation.
Well, it's hard to tell you. It's just a great big wooden structure with a fan where the water falls down through here, and the big fan is drawing the air up through there, and it's evaporating some water. And during the process of evaporation, the water loses heat. You can get a maximum of 15 degrees in one of those towers. Drop.
Okay.
And they're big things. They're big as this house. They go up in the air, and there's great big fans up there that suck this air up through this water that's going down, being dispersed down through there.
How many gallons of water would be recycled in a sequence?
Each one of those towers were 2,500 gallon a minute towers.
2,500 gallons a minute tower.
I know, 'cause I built them all, so, or had them built.
Who was that?
I say I was the engineer.
Oh, you were the engineer on having the
Yeah.
towers built. But who was your foreman or superintendent at that time?
Probably Wiley Beeman,
And his title was
plant engineer.
Plant Engineer. Okay. And then would he report to C.B. Dakin? Okay.
Or Darden.
Or Tom Darton later. Okay.
I forget who all. Oh, then Corbin was.
Elmer Corbin?
Elmer was there for a long time. Yeah. And then when Elmer left,
Del McRae?
no, Del was work plant 3.
Okay.
Del's a close friend of mine, by the way. We've hunted together and so forth for years and years and years. It was one of Del's men that took that job. Christ, I can't tell you what his name
Well, that's okay. These names leave us.
But see, I haven't got one of the problems. I can remember the older things better than I can the later things.
Well, that's true with most of us. I was going to ask you about the upsetters. What were those?
Well, they were a horizontal machine that heated a piece of steel, held it up like this. A set of dies came in, and one was dead, the other was live, came in and held it. Then a header came in with a tool and formed that end of the steel.
Okay, what were you making?
Well, during the war years, we made all our 75 and 105 shells on there.
I see.
In other words, we put the hole in the shell.
Okay.
With a round piece of steel, and this thing came in.
Reamed the center out.
And it made this round shell. Now, all the machining and everything of the shell was done with reference to that inside.
Okay.
They weren't always, that hole wasn't always perfect, so the machine sometimes had a lot more to take off on one side than they did the other.
Mm-hmm. And then that was the next step.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was quite a precision job,
yeah.
wasn't it? What kind of a machine would ream that out? What would that machine be called?
Reamed it, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, would make the machine out the extra if it were bigger on one side than another.
Well, those were mostly Excelos.
Excelos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Excel Corporation.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember any quantity of shells that you turned out at any one time?
No, but my God. We must have made millions of them.
Mm-hmm.
Plant worked 7 days a week.
Did the
Three shifts. Never stopped.
That's during the war.
Never stopped. There were some places that were called playhouses during the war, like Nash Kelvinator, but the old forge plant was a workhouse. And after the war, they just zipped right back into automotive. And
What about the powerhouse? Wasn't there a powerhouse over there?
no,
Didn't have a powerhouse at the
No.
plant too. So
our power came from, our substation was at Fisher Body.
okay.
And there's a tunnel from Fisher Body over to our plant.
Oh,
That's where the steam came from, because the steam was generated over at Fisher Body.
okay.
And the substation for our power was over there. That 4160, that was the voltage.
41.
That came to our plant until we made a big power change. And we brought in a new line and it terminated over in a powerhouse at Plant 3, and then we brought it back and put some new substations, and part of our plant was on 13,000 volts, and we were being fed half from Fisher Body and half from the substation at Plant 3. And I think there's been some changes made since then.
Mm-hmm. But right from the start, your power came from Fisher Body.
Yep, mm-hmm. It was 4160. Yep.
I see. Do you remember any incidents with labor relations other than the strikes, or any situations where committeemen were called, or
Oh God, that happened all the time.
any specific incident?
No, nothing that I remember of it.
Who was the labor rep over there?
Les Davison was there for years.
Okay. So you had pretty good labor relations.
We didn't have any problems, no.
Mm-hmm. Other than the...
Your butter, Ma? No, we didn't have very many.
What did you do with machines when you changed a process and you were using a different type machine. What happened to that old so-called machine?
They just shipped them out, and they were probably sold to a second-hand dealer, and after the war we shipped out hundreds of machines. I have no idea on earth what happened to them or where they went. I got an idea they were probably sold for scrap. But most of those machines had run their race by the time the war was over.
Oh, yes.
They'd
7 days a week, 3 shifts.
they'd run the race.
Mm-hmm. Well, that must have been kind of an exciting time to work over there then.
It was a busy time.
But you felt like you were really accomplishing
Yeah.
something, too.
Yeah, I had a man come to me that had worked, one of my repairmen had worked one straight year without a day off. He asked for Labor Day weekend off, and I gave it to him. And Monday morning he was back. I said, "What's the matter with you?" He said, "I didn't know what to do with myself."
Oh, gee.
Where'd you work?
I was in public relations. I worked for the director of public relations.
Jack White?
Yes, Jack White, and then Fritz Bennett's, and then the last director before BOC was Phil Workman from GM Central Office.
Jack lived right across the street from me in Marmore.
Very nice man.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, did you ever see any brass over in the forge plant, Bert? Would any of the plant managers or GM?
Used to see Skinner.
Mr. Skinner used to come over
You
often?
better believe it.
Would you know he was coming, or
No.
did he just...
You got a bunch of men. If I had some men in working on Sunday, and whoever was a foreman look up, that'd be Mr. Skinner might be walking through to see how things were. But that's the only one I remember.
Mm-hmm. How was Mr. Skinner to deal with?
Well, as far as I was concerned, he never caused us any problem.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of those visits he made, there never were any repercussions as far as we were concerned.
Just kind of wanted to see what was going on.
Yeah, I had an old foreman named Bert Bell. He'd say, "Oh, Skinner was over to see me." He didn't have any problem.
Mm-hmm.
But
What are some of the other men that worked for you? Can you remember some names?
yeah, when the two plants really got amalgamated together, and the plant engineering department became one department under Rasmussen.
What was his first name?
Bill Rasmussen.
Rasmussen, okay.
And I was sent over to Plant 3 as general supervisor over engineering for Plants 2, 3, and 4.
You remember about what year that was?
64, 63, 64.
Okay.
And I had my own engineers, which I'd had at Plant 2, plus they sent me over.
Then your headquarters were where?
At Plant 3.
Plant 3.
A great big office up there. And there about, must have been 20 engineers all told.
Remember the names of some of them?
Oh, you know, Doxey and Sawyer. Quant and Wygant. Koenigsdick Carl, who's now a plant engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'd think of him if I thought long enough.
Sure.
Probably, you know.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned C.B. Dakin. What kind of a man was he to work
He
with?
was a king. He was a king. Yeah. He's a good manager, too. He was good to me.
Mm-hmm. And Tom Darnton?
I knew Tom real well.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't seen him in years. He wasn't really made for a manufacturing man. He was got to be vice president of purchasing down at GM, which was...
Right.
In fact, he went on and became director of purchase at Oldsmobile, which was, that was, his talents were in that direction.
Mm-hmm. And Elmer Corbin?
Elmer was a good operator. Good operator. Liked to play cards. Of course, everybody at Plant 2 played cards. Bob Ross used to say, you guys got more card players over there.
Did you work much with Mr. Rollis?
Didn't work with him, no, because he was always at Plant 1, but they were personal friends of Helen and mine.
Oh, yes.
And after we retired, they used to come down. We lived on Sanibel Island for 14 years before we moved over here. They used to come down and spend 6 weeks and rent a place. And we had a good time. Real sorry when he died.
Yes. Well, I guess we're in business again, Bert. Do you have any pictures or that you had taken over there when you were working at Plant 2 or anything like that that you might want to share with the Oldsmobile History Center? We could return them to you. But,
The what?
any photographs of certain operations or people or situations?
No, not that I know of, no.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we have been borrowing pictures from some people, and then we have...
Someplace I've got a picture that CB made everybody who was the supervisor wear a white coat.
Everyone had to wear a white
A
coat?
supervisor.
Well, every supervisor wore a white coat.
You turned it in every week and it was laundered, and there's a picture someplace, but I have any idea where the hell it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet you that 95% of that picture no longer here. That's the only picture that I ever had that had to do with Fort Plant.
Oh, yes. Well, those white coats didn't stay white very long in a Ford's plant, did they?
No, mine used to get kind of dirty. Everybody did, but CB didn't care.
Well, at least you could identify a supervisor from a distance. Was he out in the plant a lot?
Yep. But he only had one leg,
Yes.
It was hard for him to get around. He'd get around.
Do you remember any girls that worked in Plant 2? In the offices?
Yeah. CB's girl was Kay.
Kay McDonald?
I don't know.
Okay.
Kay. And then they sent Dorothy Snyder over there when Mahoney retired.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And Cutler didn't want it. So they took Ruth Kufel. You know Ruth, probably.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
From our plant and sent Dorothy over there. And there weren't very many girls. Doris somebody.
Okay.
Doris worked for Niehaus in accounting. Doris and Jesse Parsons.
Okay.
There just weren't too many females in the Ford plant.
You didn't have any women working on hourly?
Few during the war years, yeah. But after the war years, there were a few working building 6, but that's all. Not very many.
What did the women who worked there do during the war?
Inspection,
I see.
mostly. Handling hot forgings and scale and hot scale and blowing around isn't exactly ladies' work, you know.
No, no.
By the equality of the sexes, that just doesn't quite come.
No. Do you remember any accidents or injuries in the plant?
Had some, you know.
Can you recall one?
Yeah, one of them was a great big steel thing about from here to that TV, about that big round that they swung to knock the keys out of a hammer. And that doesn't mean anything to you, but it kept.
What, had it been on a conveyor
It
or
was hung off in the
hoist?
15-ton crane up there.
Yeah.
They swung that. These men pulled it back and swung it and hit this key, tried to drive his key out of the hammer. That doesn't mean anything to you, but it's what holes have died and so forth. The chip flew off and went through a guy's heart. But after that, we devised a mechanical thing that we strapped on the hammer to do that.
Well, how would this key get in the hammer?
This is not a key like you're talking
No,
about.
but how,
It was driven in with that same device.
and that was part of its normal operation.
Oh, yeah.
But you had to get it out at a certain time, too.
You had to use they used this big swinging thing, but we got with Erie hammer and we devised one that ran off the air, and it was better and more efficient and
Safer.
less dangerous. And the rest of the whole forging industry copied it.
I see.
Big safety. So that big swinging thing was hazardous. We had to have men that knew exactly what they were doing when they.
Oh, yes.
That's the only serious accident. We must have had other ones, but
Nobody ever fell into a pickle bath or...
yeah, the guy did one.
Oh,
He
really?
he was a painter. He was working on a Sunday.
Was he an Oldsmobile man?
No, contract.
Contract. Mm-hmm.
In there, now whether these contract painters are, they aren't the top-notch people in the world. Most of them were alcoholics, and he was up there without any precautions painting the ceiling, and he fell off, and he probably was dead before he ever hit the pickle tank. You know what I mean? He fell down through all that steel, sporting steel.
Mm-hmm.
That was on a Sunday. There wasn't anybody around there.
They wouldn't have found him till Monday, would they?
No. Somebody, they found him, fished him out of there. That's the only two fatalities I remember.
Mm-hmm. So the only tunnel was that between the two plants, Fisher and the plant 2, was for the transportation of the energy.
Yep, that's right.
Well, now on these big forging machines, what created the heat? Were these gas-fired or electric or?
The induction heating was electric.
Okay.
High frequency, high cycle. The furnaces were all gas. They were all oil to start with. Oil fired.
You mean when they first started and then they
Yep.
switched to gas
I
after they
switched,
got...
and I was the switching guy. I did
Oh,
it.
okay.
Slowly but surely we switched it all to gas.
Do you remember when that change took place from oil to gas?
No.
Okay. Well, that... What, did you have a large amount of scrap on the...
Forging?
Yeah, forgings. How did you handle that scrap? Were you there?
Sold it.
Okay, you weren't there when they had the scrap utilization program.
They built it. It was built while I was at Plant 3 with those engineers. Carl Koenigsnick was my engineer in charge of that.
Okay.
And that was just getting underway with making it. Bud Miller was the superintendent.
Okay.
It was just making the first, shearing the first pieces. They sheared them hot. After they turned this molten steel into a bar, instead of letting it pouring into a mold like a steel mill does and then reheat it, they made it into a bar, then sheared it to length. I was just starting that when I retired.
And that was still making the crankshafts. Okay.
Yeah, the forge plant would go in full blast tonight. I left in '72, it would go in full blast.
Well, Bert, had you planned to retire at that time, or did you take an early opportunity the factory offered, or what?
No, the factory never offered me. I had trouble
Okay.
getting out. I was 60.
And you hired in 1934, so you had
37 years or something like that. Yeah, I wasn't. Just probably shouldn't be on that thing, but
you can shut that off.
I was,
Maybe. About that esprit de corps among the forge people.
oh yeah, they were pretty much all for Oldsmobile. They didn't particularly like the guy that bought a Ford.
They didn't like
That wasn't anything that was anybody told them to think. They just thought that way.
didn't want to see a Ford parked in the parking lot.
Yeah, they didn't like that very well. The guy was just getting started and buying a second-hand car. They didn't say any too much, but if somebody bought a brand new one, they'd be telling them, Big hammermen originally were enormous men, Big, 6'4", Had to be to handle a crankshaft, Billet weighed over 100
I was
pounds.
going to ask you that. Oh my gracious. And those were all handled manually.
Yeah, well, there was a chain hung down and a pair of tongs, and the hammers, they went from one die to the next.
But you still had a lot of manual
I
effort there.
tell you, they're just like, wear wool shirts, woolen underwear, because the sparks would go out when they hit the wool underwear.
Oh.
Rigging wet, they were rigging wet from morning to night. I could maintain them, but I didn't know I didn't want to run them.
How many of those machines did you have?
Hammer lines? There were 6 hammer lines, 3 hammers in line.
Oh, I see. Do you know how many crankshafts you could turn out in a day or on a shift?
Not as such, but when I went and took charge of the engineering department at Plant 2, I got in little statistics, and I took all utility costs and plotted them against the tonnage out of the back door. Tonnage out of the back door.
That mean the finished product?
Yeah, what we sold, finished forging.
Okay.
Wasn't necessary, wasn't machine or anything, it was finished forging. And we, for a long time, shipped 1 million pounds a day out of the back door.
And that was to other suppliers than the divisions too, wasn't it?
That was a total 1 million pounds. That's a lot of steel. That's when I judged all my graphs that I put out against electrical cost, gas cost, water cost, air cost.
And salaries, would that come out of there too?
No, just the cost of utility.
For utility, I see. Was most of that steel shipped on the railroad, or were there trucks handling a large amount too?
Some of it went by, all Oldsmobile stuff went by truck just over to be machined, either to Plant 3 or Plant 1. And Buick sent their own truck.
So you really didn't do any of the finish machining at Plant 2?
No, no. Mm-mm.
See.
No, we didn't get into machining until they went into differential.
And when was that, do you remember?
Yeah, that's when I went over to Plant 3, about 64.
Okay.
That's when they put in the differential plant. Took out all the heat treat furnaces and put in that big differential plant. And of course, the forge plant, they forged the parts of the differential because the differential had to be forging quality. But then all these people had to be trained, the supervisors, to machine a differential. Now, I don't know whether that differential plant still
Okay.
runs or not, because the only rear, I don't think Oldsmobile makes a rear end car that needs a differential. They're all front wheel drives, aren't they? I guess they are.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Cadillac has a big old Cadillac, and I think Chevrolet has a big car just about like a Delta used to be.
Well, then this heat treat method was kind of phased out, wasn't it?
Yeah. Only just a couple furnaces were left to take care of the differential.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, when you went over to Plant 3, did you get in on the bumper plating at all?
Well, when something needed to be done, engineering-wise, well, we got in on it, yeah.
So plant engineering is sort of a maintenance type
is.
responsibility, isn't it?
Build buildings, maintains, it covers many faucets.
Mm-hmm.
So, responsible for parking lots and building new buildings, bringing in the power supply, supplying the compressed air, and maintaining the equipment, cleaning the toilets,
Mm-hmm.
oiling the machines.
What if a machine breaks down? And
Plant
that's-
engineering business to get it fixed.
So you would have machine repairmen
Oh, yeah, sure.
that you could put right on the job.
Yeah. In about 5 or 6 years before I retired, like, Wiley had a breakdown, Wiley Beeman, and I went over and took over the duties over in Plant 3, Plant 2, and I was there when I retired.
And what area was that in?
Assistant Superintendent of Maintenance.
Okay.
I had all the maintenance for buildings.
Do you remember any special problems?
No. That was the softest job I ever had. Got things straightened around the way I wanted them, and that was the easiest job I ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Everything went fine. It was a 20-year-on, 24-hour call, you know.
Do you remember being called in the night for some emergency?
Yes, many times.
Well, name one for us.
Huh?
Name one.
Oh, God, I hate that. I just couldn't. I used to tell those guys in plant protection, for God's sakes, that's the only phone number you got. Oh, yeah.
Would they be the people that would call if something were amiss?
Yep. No. Many times.
I mean, like if a fire broke
Yeah,
down
if there
or
was a
a
fire
machine
or any
broke
place
down
where there
or
was a water problem or,
flooding or
yeah,
mechanical problem?
yeah, any kind of a major mechanical problem, they power.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I just lived a skip and a jump away from there. Really did.
So you physically would get right up and go over.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I tried to get my boy to work General Motors, and they're not going to do to me what they did to you, but it didn't bother me. It bothered him worse than it did me.
Mm-hmm.
I never had a phone put up to our cottage till after I retired.
Where was your cottage?
Oh, up on Sage Lake, which is about 30 miles, 40 miles right straight east of Boat Lake.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't put a phone up there. I retired.
Well, Bert, you had a very interesting career at GM, didn't you?
Yeah,
I can see you've enjoyed it, and you really gave a lot of yourself, too. Can you think of anything else you'd like to add to our interview?
no, I probably talked more than I should have. Yeah. We should get a old Bud Miller. You get him started, you won't be able to stop.
I wish that he had sent his form back, but we made plan to catch others later.
He retired on disability, and he's had some bad times.
Sometimes if a person isn't feeling up to par, it's really too much for them.
Yeah.
I'm going to shut this off now, but I want to thank you for your time. This has been a great interview.